Hello and welcome back to The Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. The Fire Break, as always, is sponsored by Team Wildfire, developing new technology and tactics for fighting the world's most destructive wildfires. I've got with me today AJ, aka Andreas Johansson. I think I'm getting that right. It's not too complicated. And AJ has been with the Corona Fire Department for the better part of many people's lifetimes, actually. What are you, 18 years in?
Yes.
Something like that, and 30 years in fire service. But what AJ is most known for as being the world's preeminent hero, champion, evangelist of a program called TAC or ATAC, and that's ATAK. Uh, Andres, welcome to the Firebreak. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Steve.
Absolutely. So, tell me about your background. How did you get into the fire service? What brought you there?
Yeah, you know, growing up, I was kind of always drawn to a uniform or helping people. I was a junior lifeguard in Newport Beach as a kid and kind of got exposed to emergency medical services that way. And I don't know, I was just always drawn either to military or some sort of public service. And about midway through my childhood, I moved out to the Inland Empire in this town called Marietta that is real close to the Cleveland National Forest and has a lot of wildland. And so we would frequently see kind of wildfires and fires happening and just kind of piqued my interest. And then in 1993, I went to my local county fire station right by my house and signed up to be a volunteer and just got the bug and just stuck with it and ended up working for the Forest Service Cal Fire before we're coming over to Corona Fire. So yeah, hitting 30 years now. It's been a wild
Wow.
ride.
Well, it shouldn't just be reserved for the military when we say thank you for your service.
Well,
Truly.
thank you.
So, what did you do with the forestry service?
So the station I was at as a volunteer was it was the Riverside County Fire Department with which is staffed by Cal Fire back then, CDF, California Department of Forestry Fire Protection. We called them CDF back then, not Cal Fire, with their staff. And we also had it was co-housed with the U.S. Forest Service, Cleveland National Forest Service fire engine there out of the Bear Creek Fire Station. And so I kind of got to know those folks. And, everybody's trying to get their foot in the door getting started out. So I had applied as a seasonal firefighter and then got on an engine on the Orange County side. So kind of funny, moved back home in Irvine with a family friend renting a room there and was on the engine for a couple months. And then got picked up on El Cristo Hot Shots, kind of last minute, middle of the night phone call. Hey, this is pre cell phone. Hey, would you like to go with the Hot Shots on a fire? And um, back then, and probably still true today, if they can't get everybody staff to go to a fire, they're calling. They got kind of roster from the guys from the fire engines that want to go on the crew. And I said, sure. And I drove up there in the middle of the night. I didn't know a soul on that crew. And I didn't think to ask, like, well, where are we going? Until about, they're exchanging my engine shirts for the hot shot shirts, put this on. And I was like, where are we going? They said, we're going to Montana. And I was like, oh, and changed my life. Really was just, and I ended up staying for another 5 years. So it was just
Wow.
what an experience for a young person. I was 19 years old, and it was great. Shaped my life.
It sounds like it was really a big change, not only in your work and your career, but and not only was this pre cell phone, but this was pre AJ, right? I mean, you didn't become AJ until your
Yeah,
fire
it's
friends
it's
named you,
it's
is that right?
funny. I didn't get AJ till I went to work for CDF for Cal Fire. I was Andreas Johansson back then, and then I went to work for CDF, and I had an engineer at my station was like, yeah, we're not going to call you Andreas, you're AJ now, and it's a mouthful. And you don't get to pick your nicknames in the fire service. So I thought, well, it could be a lot worse than AJ. So I didn't put up a fight.
That's
And you also
great.
don't put up a fight of your nickname either. If you don't like it, it's for sure going to be with you forever.
Right, right. Especially. Tell me about TAC. What is TAC, and why are you an evangelist for it?
So TAC is an acronym. we wouldn't be the fire service and the military without a million acronyms. So on the military side, it started as a defense tool called the Tactical Assault Kit, and originally brought in on the Android side, so it's called the Android Tactical Assault Kit, but
So
it's a suite
it's a
of,
software thing
yeah, it's a
to
software
zoom out a
suite.
little bit.
Yeah, it's a software suite. So on the civilian side, we call it the Team Awareness Kit. But yeah,
Okay.
it's a software suite, surrounding yourself around a map. So it's a geospatial engine, shows where you're at on a map. So think of Google Earth or any, mapping application that you would have on a computer or on a phone that shows where you're at, and then add a million other tools on top of that. So at the kind of core, well, where are my friendly forces that are also on this program? Where are they at? Can I communicate with them? And then is it's really left to your imagination the rest of the things that you can put into TAC. So we've brought aircraft in, live video feeds from aircraft as the aircraft is picking up and bringing in the infrared signatures, dropping that onto the map. You'd be able to put that into 3D measurement tools, communicate through a variety of networks. So outside of cellular, just like the military going overseas to a foreign country, they have to bring their network with them. That's the beauty of TAC, as well as there's many places we fight fire that do not have cellular coverage. So other means to network the devices together.
Fascinating. So some of the things you could overlay would be aerial imaging, maps, street houses, street addresses, drone footage, satellite footage, infrared,
Mm-hmm.
heat
Yeah,
maps,
you name
vegetation
it.
condition maps. So
Yep.
which of those? So you could literally overlay anything, and there's probably thousands of different feeds that you could put on there. What are the ones that you find most useful?
At the very basic, we have this kind of battle rhythm in wildfire. We all fires start small, as they say, and then some get bigger than others. But that period of, when the 911 call comes in, or the report, until things get more pronounced. So I'll give you kind of the timeline. 911 call comes in, the alarm goes out. That's our initial attack period. So we bring the resources in and we start fighting the fire. And if we're successful, we put it out during initial attack. But if we're not, and we go into an extended attack, and then maybe an incident management team shows up with the GIS section, and they're producing these, operations map. So during initial attack, it's very beneficial when we start, as these fires are progressing, when we have aircraft above that can start, telling us where the fire is. You're on the ground, you're looking at a hillside, especially at night, very difficult to understand where things are occurring, especially when you don't have a corner of 6th and Smith Street to say the fire has reached here. We're talking
Right.
about, maybe some prominent ridges and canyons that have names, but still trying to explain that from the air is very hard. So now with sensors aboard the aircraft that can start mapping this and then transmitting that down to the ground, and now you have it on an application, and now not only do you see where the fire is, now you see where you are, where the other fire resources are. You can start bringing in other layers like camera footage and things like that, doing measuring. Well, how far is this from the nearest homes? Things of that nature. You can start answering these questions yourself. So during initial attack, that's really beneficial. It's usually our most chaotic time on a fire, because we don't have, when we get these large fires and we're bringing an incident management team, comes this support network, the full incident command staff, a situation unit that is bringing all this intel in to arm operations with information to help them make better decisions. The GIS team that is creating these operations maps. So when we get on that side of kind of as we escalate beyond initial attack, we've been doing geospatial, mapping, the operations map for a long time. And typically we would use a program called Avenza that we could bring in these, what were normally printed maps that now become geospatial maps, and drop them in Avenza, and you could see yourself on the map. And you could mark that map up and drop important elements. And Steve, if you had Avenza, I could email it to you or airdrop it to you or share that. I could take these elements and zip them up in a zip file and give them to you, and then you could see them on your map. Well, ATAC takes that to a whole new level. So not only can I bring in that operations map, we can do this live. I can start sharing data with you, with the whole team, on this what we call common operating picture. Um, and if you've read the book Team of Teams by Stanley McChrystal, he uses this term called shared consciousness a lot throughout the book, and it's talking
Okay.
about bringing the teams together in Afghanistan and theater to try to accomplish this mission. And he really highlights that the more we're all on the same page and sharing information, the better we're going to be. If it's for anything to be safer, to be more effective with the public. If the fire doesn't go out despite our best means, if we can at least keep each other from getting hurt, or if we do get hurt or get in a jam, it allows us all to pivot more effectively and probably faster to get that person the help that they need. So that's the beauty of TAC, is that we're all on this kind of on the same platform, talking about the same things.
That's interesting. And what? Tell me about ease of use. When I meet somebody and I want to trade phone numbers, I'm in a jam if one of my kids isn't there to show me how to like put their name in and like, Dad, you have to have contacts plus, la la. So I usually just hand my phone to someone and say, "Could you put yourself in here?" So I'm
So
guessing, starting out as handling hoses and axes, how do you make that transition into bits and bytes? And what's the learning curve on a
sure.
software like this?
So it's interesting, and I don't. I see this kind of conflict in the fire service, and I haven't been able to put my finger on it just yet. So when I got in the fire service, no one ever said it was going to be easy.
Right.
I knocked on the door and they're like, "Hey kid, I'm 17 years old, right? I'm 17 and a half, whatever. My mom had to sign the back of my application. This scrawny kid. They're like, this is going to be hard." So I go through this physical agility and I puke. And this wasn't like, this was more of like, "Hey, we're going to let you guys know where you're at." You know, I remember going out to dinner with my parents. Like, I need to join the gym. I ran cross country, never really like into weights, and I wasn't like overweight or anything. I was just out of shape.
Yeah.
So I joined the gym. In gym, you go in there and you want to get stronger, you do reps over and over, right? And so I go through my fire service training, and to get good at putting on a breathing apparatus, reps over and over. And as they say, an amateur does it till they get it right, and a pro does it till they can't get it wrong. And
Yep.
so that's what you do. You pull that hose over and over, and you put that breathing apparatus on, you throw that ladder. And if you're in wildfire, you use that chainsaw, and so on and so forth, right? The axes, until you become a pro, until you can't get it wrong. So technology is really no different. And especially with TAC, it does take reps, it does take intentional use, because there's a lot of things that are going on in it. Um, at the very minimum, just being able to turn it on and share your location, that's pretty easy. You turn the
Okay.
application on, it's logged in. You could never look at it again, but Steve, I could see you on the map. So it was as simple as just tracking you. That's all you would need to do. But if
So
you
you're
want to do
tracking
some,
me right now, AJ? I didn't even
no, I'm
know that.
not, but we could talk about that later. Um, as far as getting someone in the program, it is pretty easy. Yeah, there are
Okay.
ways to do things through a QR code, pretty simple. There's something called TAC Tracker. That isn't even just a TAC, it's just you putting some credentials in, and then I can see you on the map. Because
Okay.
you're not always having to look at the map, right? If I'm on the fire line and I have a hose with me or a team, and I'm supervising that team, called the hose lay, or we're constructing hand line, I'm on the fire's edge. I
Yeah.
don't really, I'm
You
not
could
at
be
a
buried in
loss.
your phone at that point, right?
Yeah, I don't really need to be, because I know where the fire is. Now, if I wanted to know, well, how far has the fire progressed over this ridge, and an aircraft went and collected that data, then I could stop and look at the map and say, oh, it has progressed this far, or are there spot fires, so on and so forth. So it's not always having to stay immersed. Now, from a command and control standpoint, back at a command center, at the incident command post, a chief officer level or division supervisor, they're not, they are going to start wanting to forecast and look at that tablet or phone a little more than the guy on the fire line. But if now one of my members runs their chainsaw through their leg, or we do have a spot fire that's threatening our position and we have to retreat. The beauty now is that the first thing when those sort of things happen, when you make that report over the radio, is the first question is, where are you?
Right.
The beauty of TAC is it really eliminates that question. I can
That's
see where
great.
you're at, and
Yep.
we can pivot to come help you.
I see. That's huge. And so far as being able to look there and see where everybody is, this sounds like what my son would describe as like Snapchat for firefighters.
Yeah, there's a lot of, if you've ever, like if you're a parent out there and you've used Life 360 or Find My Friends on these, this is essentially
Right.
what you're doing.
Okay. Tell me about the platforms. You told me that you typically use it on Android. There's a Windows version.
Mhm.
And then what happens to all those, Steve Jobs diehard fans and their iPhones? Are they left
Yeah,
out of
and
this?
it's funny, right? So I use the Android version. It's the most mature version out there. That started on Android. Then the Windows version came, um, and now there's a virtual reality version. There's a web version, and yes, there's an iOS version. So we're talking 2010. This really starts, and mobile compute at that point. We're talking 3 years in from the iPhone.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Android starting, becoming the competing operating system, and it's a much more open system to develop for, right? Look, I'm
Yes.
talking to you on a Mac. I have an iPhone. I think there's this thing that AJ must hate iOS. He's always talking about the Android version of TAC, despite there being an iOS version we can talk about. But it is the most mature version, and it's being funded by the U.S. government at a much higher level. From US SOCOM, Special Operations Command. So all the bells and whistles that we're building for our special operations forces now translate really well over to public safety. They have the same sort of needs. Where are my friendlies? Where are the hostiles? Well, for us, would be a hostile would be like, well, where is something bad that's happening? Like a spot fire or maybe a snag patch that could fall and hurt somebody, so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
They're wondering where the hostiles are, where their friendly forces are. So the Android platform's been developed, we're talking 13 years now. The
Okay.
iOS version's only been a few years. There was an effort back in 2017 um, that can only take it so far with iOS, and it kind of just piddled out. Like I used to jailbreak my iPhones because I wanted it to do the things that I knew it could do, that
Right.
developers knew it could do, that Apple kind of constrained you on. And I understand from a business model, right? You want to have a little bit more control over that, and Android's always been more open. My Mac is wide open to do what I want with, but iOS. So a couple years ago, you've got this big TAC ecosystem of, outside of just the military and the federal side, you've got FBI using it, Secret Service using it, ATF, so on and so forth, the Customs and Border Patrol. And the U.S. Secret Service wanted to use this on iPhone. So there was this effort through DHS S&T to use an existing contractor they had to build out the iOS version. It's never been meant to be. It was never the goal to like, hey, this is going to be full parity with what we have in ATAC.
Okay.
It's more of a lighter application. It's still very beta, although you can download it on the App Store. It just has a lot more limitations. So that's something we just. It's a good tracker. It can do some basic information, but that's why we've stayed on Android for TAC, just to have that full all the capability that's out there.
So tell me about when you say all the capabilities versus restricted capabilities. Um, I'm gonna guess that the limiting factor really isn't how much data you can throw into the phone or throw onto that screen, but how much data you're capable of processing, whether you're in the field or in the command truck. Like there's a human limit there that a certain amount of
100%.
information is great and too much information is actually counterproductive. What,
I
how do you tier that?
The beauty of, I mean, there's some great things in tax, some filtering tools, right? So, and I even see it. I've grabbed a TAC tablet, say from someone using it, right, in our organization, and we're going to do some training, whatever. and it's not my normal device, right? And we share these devices, on the fire engine. I go off duty, someone else comes on, and I've hopped on duty and looked at the TAC device, and every layer known to man is turned on. And it just looks like this modern art masterpiece, right? Of all these colors and things. And I'm just like, yeah, that's too much information. I wholeheartedly agree with you on that, that you can overwhelm the map where now you may not be picking up on these things that you need. So TAC has some really neat filtering tools in there. It can filter by geospatial location, but you can turn off different, it groups things. So yeah, filtering is probably your best tool in TAC, in my opinion. Um, I follow a Dr. Gassaway. He does
Yeah.
like situational
Yep.
awareness matters, and I took a class from him years ago, and I missed. If you've ever seen this, they bring in. It's a video they have you watch. There's
The
two teams.
monkeys.
Yeah, it's the
The
it's the
the the
kids passing the basketball, right?
Yeah,
And I
fascinating video.
miss I miss the 500-pound gorilla, you know, and I
Right.
couldn't believe it. And my buddy taking the class with me saw it, and I thought, you must be joking. And then replayed the video, and you're like, I was so task saturated or so focused that
Yep.
I missed that. And what I love about TAC or just technology in general is that the technology, because you can only, like you said, you can only hold on to so many things. Even if you're using a pad of paper, right? Like, okay, where is that person? I write this down. Okay, this is their last location. Where are you? Well, you can only do so much. It takes time. Let the technology start capturing all that data. You filter it, and then when you need that information, you can turn that data element on and then start focusing on that. But you turning it off for your view doesn't mean that the device still isn't capturing all that
Right.
data.
Have you ever been surprised on the flip side of that, where where there was a layer of data or a feed, that you just didn't consider, vital to divide your attention, towards or away from, that then turned out to be something that you really did enjoy and did benefit from, knowing that you never would have guessed would have been of value to you.
Well, I think a lot of it's, I would say, I never really experienced where I had it already on my device, but I've had post facto going like, discovered a data feed, right, that is available that I could have put in TAC and was like, boy, this would have really come in handy, in this certain situation. There's some other neat things in TAC too, like geofencing, that can start alerting you to events that are occurring to you within the, proximity. So yeah, I don't care what's going on in Colorado if I'm in California, right? So, but I could have all
Hey,
these
wait a minute,
data
I'm in
feeds.
Colorado.
I love Colorado. I'll be there at TAC offsite in July. But you can quickly overwhelm yourself, right, with information that isn't relevant to your situation at the time.
Right.
So having geofences is also a neat tool in TAC that, hey, just let me know. It could be a large incident. It could be the Dixie fire, right? That's got thousands and thousands and thousands of people on the incident spread over a large area, um, and you don't want to be distracted from information that's not relevant to your current situation. It may be relevant at some point. I can bring it, kind of a nexus to radio comms. When we go to these large fires, yes, I could scan every division's channel. My radio
Right.
would never stop squawking because people will be talking, and most of that at the tactical level, at a division level, wouldn't be relevant to what's happening in my situation. And it
Right.
could fog me from really picking up something that is important to my situation.
Right. As Dr. Gassaway or Bart van Leeuwen would say, right? Too much information, your brain just starts tuning it out, and then you end up missing stuff that you really need.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very easy. Yeah. So these are kind of like the unintended consequences when we marry the works of data scientists with real world, with people's ability to integrate that. Um,
Yeah.
I wonder if a program like TAC would ever, warn you, hey, I'm spitting out so much information, you might be approaching the limit of your ability to ingest it.
Yeah, I mean that's something I'm sure like Ralph Kohler at the Air Force Research Lab would be interested in. Is there could TAC understand that you have too many layers open on the map? Like you said, it you might be missing something important, and just give you a little toast message that'll pop up. Like,
Right.
hey, think about.
Dismiss.
Well, it's funny. Some of these online classes you take now will tell you. They'll pop up and say, "Hey, you've been at this for 2 hours. The science tells us that actually, you taking a break right now, go outside, take a walk, or whatever, um, would benefit your learning. That you need actually a break."
Fascinating. Fascinating. What are the other areas that TAC is being used in? You talked about military, fire service.
I'd say it's biggest outside the military, law enforcement on like the public safety side. Most of
Yeah.
it because FBI uses this a lot, and so if you're local law enforcement doing things, with federal law enforcement, it's kind of bled into there a lot, and they have the same sort of problems that we do on the fire side. The questions of where things are occurring.
Yeah.
And essentially, especially if I would go back to like, self preservation, you're in trouble. The last thing you want to have to do is look down, you know, at a map and describe where you are. Like I said, if you're on the corner in 6th and Smith Street, it makes it very easy. Imagine being a law enforcement officer in a foot pursuit through a large apartment complex, and now you've caught whoever, and
Right.
now you're trying to describe where am I? I've lost. I took 3 lefts or right. Now you can just tell over the radio, hey, I've got suspect at gunpoint or whatever.
Right.
Everybody else can rally around that position. So the law enforcement piece, I think, of course, wildfire is a big epic. It's very much like a military operation. You're working in austere locations, poor comms. Um, again, not being able to describe where you're at in a real valuable way to people is really tough, or it can lead to a lot of um, confusion. If you've ever, it's great to listen to the radio traffic at the end of the Yarnell Hill fire, although it's tragic listening to the Granite Mountain Hotshot superintendent trying to describe where he's at. He's trying to read Latin long over a radio that's getting a bunch of wind in the mic. There's confusion for the other people on the incident. I thought you were over here, you know. And when you think
Yeah.
about what TAC might have been able to do to help solve, that's really what keeps me doing this a lot. We think about, no one's saying like, hey, Surrey, should I hike down that canyon, and waiting for, some process to, understand about what, okay, yes, it's safe. That's not what we're saying, because we've had rules of engagement to keep us safe for a long, long time. And they're all been hard lessons learned by people getting hurt or killed, right? When I started in the fire service, there were 13 situations that shout watch out. Now these are kind of pop-ups to tell you, hey, if this is occurring, you really need to reevaluate what you're doing. It could be weather getting hotter and drier, frequent spot fires, you're cutting line downhill, so on and so forth. So when I started, there was 13. In 1994, we had a fatality at the South Canyon fire, and that killed, I think, 14 people. Hot shots, smoke jumpers, hell attack, some of our best, right? And then we had 18 situations that shout watch out.
Wow.
Yarnell happens 10 years ago. There's no more situations that came out. Nothing they did was an aha moment. It was, you know, they ignored some of our just rules of engagement. But what I like to think with TAC or programs like that is, when I'm looking at hiking through the green to get to said location, how far is that? Because your mind can play tricks on you. I could
Yeah.
draw a route and tack and say, oh, that's large. How long might that take me? Right? We can have algorithms to say that. And better yet, if there's an ISR aircraft up, where's the last known location of the fire and what way is it traveling? You know, and to take it even a step further, you know, Big Brother, someone looking that's back at a command center, right? That can see everything and go watching these dots hike down the hill, knowing where the fire is, and maybe check up with those folks. What is your intention? Where are you planning to go? You're on an intersection for not good, you know?
Yeah. No, having that oversight can be huge.
Yeah. And I mean, people freak out about that. I don't want to be, even I had the Hotshot, the guy that runs the Hotshot Wake Up podcast. We converse now and then, and I said, "Hey, would you put something on your Instagram to ask people would they want to be tracked on a fire?" And it's like 70% of the people that responded said no, 30% said
Wow.
yes, right? So, but I wanted to take that further, right? Of the
Yeah.
70%, how long have you been in the fire service? Have you ever had a close call or know someone that has? And vice versa, right? The 30%,
Yeah.
and really dissect that. I'd like to say if you've ever been in a close call or a fatality or something like that, you're like, yes, I want people to
You're in the
know.
30%.
I want people to know where I am, you know?
Yeah. It sounds like that, this technology really life saving in terms of your ability to visualize, up to the moment information. What about the hardware technology part of making the communication happen? Not the content, but how do you get the
Yeah.
signal out and how do you get the signal in?
Yeah, the network piece is it's all great when you're on great Wi-Fi or you've got great
Right.
cellular signal, and
Right.
then you know,
You're
and
plugged
then
into the
yeah,
router.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so yes, the application is useful if you are disconnected. You can still see where you're at and see some, any elements that you collected before you went off. Much like I mentioned that program Avenza, I've got the operations map. I can still see me. Okay. So the beauty of TAC though is those other networks. There's an acronym we use in operations. We have a PACE plan, our primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency plan. And I like to bring that over into the network side of the house, or connectivity side. And our primary is LTE, right? Like that's how we're connected to the TAC server, to each other. Um, and then when that goes away, okay, well, I'm probably not going to have three methods to connect. I'm not going to have, but I call it the ACE card. What is your ACE card? What are you going to use outside of cellular connectivity to connect? And, if you're on a vehicle, well, that's pretty easy. You could have, a satellite terminal. And now, with Starlink becoming very much more affordable and,
Right.
and, and widespread. All right. So, but now you're not at a vehicle, now you're out on the fire line. How am I going to keep connected? And there's a couple ways to do that. At its core, ATAC was built, actually TAC server and being connected, from California to Colorado came later. It was actually built on multicast technology, meaning, the quickest example I could give you, you could take two ATAC devices and then hop on your home Wi-Fi, and those two devices will automatically discover each other, and you will see each other on the map, and you can start sharing information back. I could drop a point on the map and broadcast it or send it to you. um, so with that being said, the same thing goes true. I can bring a layer 2 network like that out into the field, and there's a number of we call mesh network type capabilities that we can, there are a number of vendors that you can bring out in the field. So if I don't have cellular connectivity, and now we have these auxiliary radios that the ATAC device is talking through, we can still communicate. And then there are some satellite providers that have a little puck that you can bring with you that your ATAC device can communicate with as well. So there's a lot of other options outside of cellular, which is what makes TAC, um, I'd say, like the ultimate Swiss Army knife for this sort of stuff. Is many
Yeah.
of these applications are, you're dead in the water outside of cellular connectivity. There is no peer-to-peer mesh networking type of capability. So, um,
So
I
now
don't
there
want to drop
is.
a bunch of vendors, but if you go to the taxsyndicate.org, my website, I've got a bunch, and I don't take any money from anybody. Those are just, hey, if they're in the tax space and they're doing this sort of stuff, I've got their links on there.
That's terrific. AJ, if folks going to get more information about TAC, what's your website? Because
So the
I'm
tax,
guessing that your website's probably got more information about TAC than the TAC website,
well,
or at
I
least
have,
organized, in a way, like, because you're an end user,
yeah,
and you could steer people towards, like, here's the real deal.
yeah, I've got an FAQ on there. So it's the taxsyndicate.org. I've got an FAQ on there, that kind of explains the space, especially for public safety, who's doing what, where you can get information from. tac.gov is the official federal website. And I don't think we talked about it, but this is government off the shelf technology. We've all heard of COTS, commercial off the shelf, but the government um, develops this technology. And I think this came out of the Obama administration, that if the government is going to, develop technology that can be used by the people, then we will release it at, of course, I can't get the military version, but
Right.
they scrub it, right, and now we have civilian application for it.
But
So
the military can get your version.
yes, and the
Yeah.
I think there's this idea too that like there's some like E1 private over there coding and making tech is for the it is they have a company,
Yep.
a software company that builds this for them. They create the capabilities that they want, and here it comes. It gets built.
It
So
sounds
yeah.
like they've got big ears there for listening to feedback from end
Oh
users
yeah.
like yourself.
That's I think one of the greatest things about the TAC community is, this was a military application that is, obviously transformed into public safety. And they've really, brought us in with open arms. They really want to hear. It's great to see either something I've thought up or a little TAC group and brought it to them, and then to see it in like the next update. It's just
Wow.
great because like, many of the things that we think of, it's definitely got military crossover. So
Sure.
it's really neat.
So it's what did you say? The tax syndicate?
Yeah, thetaxsyndicate.org is my
The
website, and then
taxsyndicate.org.
and
Okay.
then tac.gov
Gov.
is the the official a website from the government.
And you can find it at the Android store, the
Yep, yep. iTac on the TAC
Google
from
Play,
Google Play. Yep,
and even if you want the scaled down version, the iOS App Store.
yep,
Great.
yep.
AJ, I cannot thank you enough for joining me today on the Fire Break. This is really, really eye opening and situational awareness increasing. So I want to thank you for your enthusiasm and thanks for sharing what you know about this program.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.
You bet. Join us again, please.
I will
You've been
do.
listening to The Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. We're sponsored by Team Wildfire, developing new tactics and technology for combating the planet's most destructive wildfires. Join us again on The Fire Break next time. Thanks so much and take care.